The film begins with a woman driving her car visibly on the verge of a breakdown as she bursts into tears. While driving through a forest, she pulls over to the side, steps out of the car, but doesn't leave empty-handed. She carries a gun and a large bag. Just a few steps away from her vehicle, she is struck at high speed by another car. The group responsible for the accident are friends named John, Travis, Leonardo, and Paul, who were on their way to the forest to spend their day off hunting. After the crash, they are overcome with panic, fearing the legal consequences. They cautiously approach the woman to check if she is still alive, but unfortunately, they discover that she has already passed away. At this point, John suggests to his friends that they either bury the body before anyone sees them or take her to the hospital without revealing their identities. As they debated what to do, John opened the bag the woman had been carrying and was stunned to find millions of dollars inside. He couldn't believe his eyes. How could someone be carrying such an enormous amount of money in an ordinary bag while walking alone? At that moment, he made up his mind and said to his friends, "We're not taking her to the hospital. We'll bury the body here as if nothing happened, and we'll split this money among ourselves. We'll be rich." His friends, especially Paul, were deeply shocked by his suggestion. Paul tried to argue, saying, "We're not killers. We can't just bury a body and take her money. What if she's still alive? And how do we even know where this money came from? It could be illegal." But John dismissed his concerns entirely. The sight of the money had blinded him, and he insisted on his plan, leaving his friends torn between fear, guilt, and temptation. In the midst of their hesitation, a police car suddenly appeared near them, heightening their panic. They hurried to hide the body before the officer reached them. When the officer approached, they tried to act naturally to avoid arousing his suspicion. The policeman asked them if they had seen a woman carrying a large bag, to which they replied in the negative, claiming that their car had suddenly broken down and they were trying to figure out the problem. However, the officer seemed suspicious and offered to help them fix the car. He tried to circle around the car to see what was inside, but John pointed his weapon at him and threatened to kill him if he didn't leave. However, the foolish cop tried to intimidate John, saying they would catch him. Without hesitation, John fired a shot into his head. At that moment, his friends realized they were in deep trouble and that they were now inevitably wanted. They had no choice but to continue with John. As the situation was no longer about one body but two, they carried the woman's body and placed it in the car, then headed to John's house in the woods, where they decided to bury the body and hide the money until they finished their hunting trip and could split it later. Outside the house, Travis was digging a hole to bury the body, while Paul was on the phone with his family, as if saying goodbye, knowing full well that his fate could be prison or worse. Leonardo, on the other hand, sat in a state of shock, unable to believe they had turned into criminals within minutes. The friends gathered away from John to discuss what they should do the next day. Each of them wondered whether they should tell their families the truth, but in the end they all agreed to keep the money and deposit it in the bank, as if trying to cling to something normal amidst the chaos. But as they were talking, a strange man suddenly appeared in front of them and said, "You have something that belongs to me. The millions you have are my money, and you'd better return them quietly." At that moment, John came out of the house and asked, "How did you find us?" The man calmly replied, "I simply tracked your car after finding that woman's car abandoned on the road." But John refused and raised his weapon, pointing it at the man as he said, "You don't have any money with me, and that's not all, my friend." He then tied him up inside the house. Meanwhile, Paul and Leonardo headed to the forest to see if there were any other men following this guy. As they walked through the woods, they spotted him. He looked scary, so they ran after him until they caught up with him. At that moment, John aimed his gun at the man and asked about his connection to their captive. The man swore he had no relation to him and didn't know what they were talking about. He begged them to let him go, explaining he had a wife and kids and didn't want to leave them alone. Things started getting tough for Travis, who pleaded with John to lower his weapon because the man seemed poor and wronged and clearly uninvolved in their affairs. But John insisted on killing him, arguing that now the man knew too much and could alert the police if he survived. Raising his weapon again, John declared that Leonardo would kill the man under his orders since none of their crimes were committed alone. And so Leonardo ended up shooting the man, deeply affecting him psychologically. He decided right then and there to part ways with the group and go off on his own. The others returned to the house to confront the second man, debating whether to kill him or divide the money and make him swear silence. When they entered and questioned him, however, they discovered something shocking. He knew each of them by name, along with the names of their families and children. This revelation enraged John, and he immediately drew his weapon. Unfortunately, before anything else happened, the man revealed a devastating secret about John. He had murdered a woman in California when she threatened to expose him unless he handed over all his money. Not satisfied with just killing her, John dismembered her body to ensure complete concealment. After hearing this secret, John's partners were utterly shocked. In that moment, Leonardo entered with his weapon drawn and pointed it at John, demanding that he stop. John tried to calm him down, arguing that what he had done was for all of their benefit, that they were in the same boat, and that he might have to kill more because of his actions. He then asked Leonardo to look at him and listen carefully, using the opportunity to grab Leonardo's weapon and threaten to kill him within seconds. At that point, Travis and the other Leonardo shouted warnings to John not to do it, but he paid no attention to them. Travis then struck John on the head, knocking him unconscious. When John regained consciousness, he insisted on taking the money for himself and abandoning his partners. But when he went to where the money was supposed to be, it wasn't there. When he asked Travis and Leonardo about its location, they told him that Paul had taken it to hide it. While the conversation continued, the man who had been listening learned that the money was no longer in the house. John left the house armed, determined to find Paul, who had hidden the money near a tree. As he walked toward the forest, Leonardo once again threatened to shoot him if he didn't return. But John ignored his words and kept walking. Eventually, Leonardo fired a shot, hitting John in the leg, preventing him from reaching Paul. After some time, despite his injury, John managed to move again and continued searching for Paul in the forest. When he found him, he threatened to kill him unless he revealed the location of the money. Paul agreed to lead him to it. However, during their journey, John stepped into an animal trap, injuring his leg for the second time. At that moment, Leonardo threatened him again, saying he would kill him if he didn't stop obsessing over the money that had destroyed their relationships in just a few hours. Paul returned to Travis and Leonardo, and together they decided to escape with the money far away from John. But they were still debating what to do with the tied-up man. Travis said, "Let's finish this quickly to save time," and struck the man on the head with his gun. Immediately after, they heard a loud, unexpected noise, which made them panic and rush out of the place. On the other hand, John managed to remove the trap from his leg and continued waiting in the forest because he knew they would come back for the money. Sure enough, when they returned, John killed Travis with his gun while hiding behind a tree. He then tried to kill Paul and Leonardo as well. However, Paul and Leonardo attempted to calm him down, saying they wanted to restore their friendship and split the money among the three of them, putting an end to the fighting. But John refused, stating that he wouldn't leave the spot without all the money for himself. If they resisted, he would kill them. Leonardo approached him unarmed, trying to convince him to go back to how things were. In that moment, Leonardo was shocked to see the man they thought they had killed earlier standing behind John. John assumed that Leonardo had changed his mind when he stopped moving toward him, so he shot and killed Leonardo. Now only Paul remained still hiding from John. At that point, Paul decided to use his weapon to kill John. When John went to grab the bags of money himself, Paul shot and killed him. But the surprise came when the man they believed dead suddenly came back to life and struck Paul on the head, then began drinking his blood. In that moment, it was revealed that the man wasn't human. He was a vampire who had been orchestrating the entire game. The secret had started from the very beginning, with the woman carrying the money who turned out to be another vampire using humans to collect blood for them in a remote area. And that was the end of the film.